I never thought that a routine school day could spiral into the kind of nightmare and secret thrill that would consume my life. My name is Ryan, a 17-year-old high school student, just trying to navigate grades, friends, and the awkwardness of teenage life. I was a regular guy, reasonably popular, but nothing special. That is, until Ms. Davenport, my science teacher, took an interest in me, and in my body. Ms. Davenport wasn't just any teacher. She had this sharp intelligence, combined with an aura of elegance that made everyone take notice. Her hair was always perfectly styled, her lab coat impeccably pressed, and her voice, calm, precise, almost hypnotic, had a way of making you listen, no matter how distracted you were. I'd had her for 2 years now, and while I respected her, I never imagined that respect would evolve into something much more complicated. It all started with the human biology experiment. She announced it casually during class one Friday morning, holding a strange, metallic device in her hand. For this next experiment, she said, her voice clipped and authoritative, I'm going to test the effects of hormonal simulation on human physiology. Volunteers will be needed. A few students groaned. Others whispered to one another. And me? I was frozen in place. Something about the gleam in her eyes made me suspicious. There was more to this than just a classroom experiment. And before I knew it, her gaze locked onto me. Ryan, she said, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me, you'll be perfect for this trial. Me. I stammered, heart racing. I wasn't sure if I was terrified, flattered, or both. The rest of the class seemed oblivious to the subtle tension forming in the room. Yes, you, Ms. Davenport replied, stepping closer. You're the ideal candidate for a controlled observation. We'll monitor the physical and psychological effects very carefully. Her tone was calm, almost soothing, yet beneath it lay an unmistakable undercurrent of command. I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could form a coherent sentence, she added, almost casually, and don't worry, Ryan. Everything will be perfectly safe, theoretically. The word theoretically sent a shiver down my spine. My palms were sweaty as I followed her into the lab after class. The other students had been dismissed, leaving just the two of us amid the gleaming counters, microscopes, and strange bottles filled with liquids I couldn't begin to identify. This will only take a few minutes, she said, motioning for me to sit in a sleek chair that looked more like a dentist's chair than anything scientific. My stomach churned. Even though I trusted science, even though I trusted her as a teacher, something about this felt different. Personal. Experimental. Dangerous. First, she began, producing a small vial filled with a shimmering pink liquid. You'll ingest this. It's part of the hormonal simulation. Her voice was calm, almost melodic, but I could see the calculating gleam in her eyes. I hesitated, staring at the vial. You trust me, don't you? She asked softly. I nodded, unsure why. There was something compelling about her authority, about the way she carried herself, that made it almost impossible to resist. I swallowed, hands trembling, as she guided the liquid toward my lips. The taste was faintly sweet, slightly metallic, leaving an odd warmth in my stomach. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Then, as I blinked, a strange tingling sensation swept through my body. My chest felt tight, my skin suddenly sensitive, and a strange warmth pooled in my abdomen. I coughed, and Miss Davenport's eyes narrowed slightly, studying my reactions. Good. That's exactly the response we were expecting. She circled me slowly, as if inspecting a specimen rather than a student. Now, the real transformation begins. I froze, staring at her. Transformation. I croaked, my voice cracking. My throat felt different, softer, lighter. My fingers itched, and I noticed subtle changes in my posture, as though my body itself was responding to something I couldn't see. Yes, she said simply, her voice steady and commanding. By the end of this experiment, you'll understand firsthand what it's like to inhabit a completely different form. And don't worry, Ryan, you'll learn more than just science tonight. My heart raced. Fear, confusion, and an odd spark of curiosity tangled inside me. I had always been aware of my body, curious even, but never in a context like this. And now, under the cool, observing eyes of Ms. Davenport, I realized I had no choice. She had initiated this experiment, and I was trapped, yet strangely, intrigued. As the minutes passed, the tingling sensation intensified. My muscles softened, my chest felt tender, and a subtle lightness settled in my legs. I glanced down, and my jaw dropped. My body was changing, literally reshaping itself. It was subtle at first, curves forming where there had been none, skin smoothing, my face refining. But the speed was terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly real. Ms. Davenport smiled, watching every micro-expression. "Excellent," she murmured. "Now, we observe, and record." I could barely speak, barely move. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. The boy I had been just minutes ago was slipping away, replaced by a version of myself that was undeniably feminine, undeniably hers to study. And as I looked at her, I realized something terrifying and thrilling. I wasn't just participating in an experiment. I was becoming the experiment itself. The tingling sensation coursing through my body was impossible to ignore. My chest felt heavier, then lighter, then soft and rounded in a way that was undeniably feminine. My legs ached with a strange, delicate soreness, as if my bones themselves were rearranging. I tried to speak, to protest, but my voice had changed, softer, higher, almost melodic. The sound of it sent shivers down my spine. Ms. Davenport moved around me with the precision of a surgeon, observing every reaction, jotting notes on her clipboard. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, but there was an unmistakable spark of satisfaction. "You're adjusting well," she murmured. "Most subjects struggle with the psychological adaptation at this stage. You seem curious." Curious. That word made my stomach twist in ways I hadn't anticipated. I wanted to resist, to be the boy I had always been, but another part of me, a deeper, secret part, was mesmerized. I had always been fascinated by femininity, by the subtle power it held, by the way the body could transform and express identity in ways I could only dream of. And now, under her careful, deliberate guidance, I was living that dream. But with stakes that terrified me. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and something floral, like a perfume I couldn't place. It mingled with the warmth of my own shifting body, creating an almost intoxicating haze. My hands, slender, softer, brushed against the edge of the chair. Every movement reminded me of how different I felt, how fragile, and how exposed. I could see the beginnings of curves forming under my shirt, my chest swelling gently, my hips widening, a subtle sway developing in my stance. Ms. Davenport handed me a mirror. "Observe yourself," she instructed. "You must understand the changes to fully inhabit them. Awareness is key." I stared at my reflection, and for a moment, panic overtook me. The boy I had been just minutes ago was gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable, yet undeniably me. My jawline had softened, my eyes appeared larger, and my hair was longer, cascading down my shoulders in silky waves. My clothes hung differently, as if my body had grown into them in unexpected ways. I touched my face, my chest, my hips, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with what I had been. "You're doing well," Ms. Davenport said, her voice a balm against the storm of emotions inside me. "Now comes the psychological adjustment." I swallowed hard. Psychological adjustment? I wasn't sure I wanted to think about that. But she wasn't just talking about looks, she was talking about inhabiting this new body, this new identity, fully. That meant moving, speaking, thinking, even feeling differently. It meant surrendering control, and the thought both terrified and thrilled me. She guided me through the first steps, walking, balancing, adjusting posture. Every movement felt strange at first, my hips swaying differently, my legs feeling delicate yet strong, my chest shifting with every step. Each time I caught my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to move more naturally, more confidently. The thrill of inhabiting this new form, of experimenting with a body I had only imagined, began to eclipse my fear. Then came the clothing. Miss Davenport produced a series of garments, a soft blouse, a skirt that hugged my newly formed hips, and a pair of delicate shoes. "These will help you complete the physical adaptation," she explained. "How you present yourself will affect how you feel inside." I hesitated. Dressing like a girl, standing in front of her, felt vulnerable in ways I couldn't describe. But as I slipped into the blouse, feeling the smooth fabric against my skin, a rush of exhilaration swept through me. The skirt followed, tight around my hips, soft around my thighs, forcing me to adjust my posture further. And the shoes, heels, small but elegant, made me wobble slightly with each step, yet also added a strange, intoxicating confidence. Ms. Davenport observed silently, then nodded approvingly. Excellent. Now, the final touch. She handed me a compact and a small brush. This is optional, but it will help solidify the transformation. I picked up the brush, my fingers trembling. Makeup had always been something I admired from a distance, something I experimented with in private, but never in front of anyone else, especially not her. But as I applied foundation, mascara, and a hint of blush, the transformation became complete. My reflection now looked like someone entirely new, delicate, elegant, and undeniably feminine. Yet beneath it all, a core of Ryan remained, observing, questioning, and learning to accept. The psychological tension was immense. Every glance, every movement, every breath reminded me that I was no longer the same. Fear of exposure clashed with excitement, shame tangled with curiosity, and the thrill of the experiment pushed me forward. My mind raced with questions. Could I maintain this identity outside the lab? Could anyone else know? And, most importantly, did I want to go back to being the boy I had been? Ms. Davenport's voice broke through my thoughts. Now, Ryan, or should I say, your new form. I want you to describe how it feels. I hesitated, searching for words. It's strange, I admitted. I feel vulnerable, but also powerful, excited. My cheeks flushed, not just from the makeup. I've never felt anything like this before. Good, she said softly. That is exactly what I want. The emotional adaptation is as important as the physical. You must learn to inhabit this body completely, to accept its sensations, its nuances, its power. Hours passed as she guided me through exercises, walking, speaking, balancing, gesturing, each one reinforcing the transformation. I began to notice subtle changes in how I thought, how I felt, even how I imagined the world seeing me. Fear mingled with desire, anxiety with exhilaration. Every step, every motion, every glance in the mirror deepened my understanding of this new self. By the time the evening light faded, I had fully stepped into the persona Ms. Davenport had crafted. The boy I had been that morning, timid, cautious, unaware, was gone. In his place stood someone entirely new, feminine, poised, aware, and electrified with suspense. And yet, as I looked at her, I realized that this was only the beginning. Victor's challenges had been intense, but this was different. Here, under the controlled gaze of Ms. Davenport, the transformation wasn't just about looks. It was about inhabiting an identity, exploring forbidden desires, and confronting vulnerability at its rawest. And as she smiled, watching me with satisfaction, I understood that the real experiment was only starting. The door to the lab creaked, and for a moment, my heart skipped. I was alone with Ms. Davenport, fully transformed, and yet, completely exposed. I shivered, both from fear and excitement, knowing that tomorrow, the real test would begin. The test of maintaining this identity outside the safety of the lab. By the next day, the full impact of the transformation had begun to hit me. My reflection in the mirror no longer seemed foreign. I was the girl I had become overnight. My body, soft and delicate, carried the subtle curves and contours that Ms. Davenport had guided me to embrace. My hair fell in perfect waves over my shoulders, my makeup highlighted features I never imagined I had, and my movements, hesitant at first, now carried a natural sway. But the thrill of transformation came with a razor-sharp edge of fear. Every glance from other students felt like a potential exposure, every accidental brush against a desk, every murmur in the hallways made my pulse pound. Ms. Davenport had warned me that the psychological adjustment would be harder outside the lab. And she was right. Today, you will attend class as your new form, she had instructed with that calm, controlled authority that made me obey instinctively. I will be observing, discreetly, but your ability to maintain composure is essential. The thought made my stomach churn. I had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed, but also so alive. Fear, excitement, and curiosity tangled into a knot that tightened with each step toward the classroom. I adjusted the blouse and skirt she had chosen, smoothed my hair, and took a deep breath. This was it. The real test had begun. Walking through the hallways was surreal. The familiar walls of the school seemed transformed, every glance from my classmates like a spotlight. Some looked intrigued, some whispered, some stared openly, but no one guessed the full truth. I kept my head high, careful to move with the elegance Ms. Davenport had drilled into me, balancing the delicate sway of my hips with the natural confidence I was learning to inhabit. Then came the first challenge, an encounter with my best friend, Jason. He approached casually, smiling, unaware of the storm inside me. "Hey, Ryan. You okay?" His eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. "You look different." I froze, my pulse racing. I'm trying something new," I stammered, voice higher and lighter than usual. "Just an experiment." Jason's brow furrowed, curiosity and amusement mingling. "Okay, weird, but you're rocking it." His tone was light, but my heart hammered. I had survived the first social interaction without suspicion, but only just. By mid-morning, the tension escalated. Ms. Davenport appeared unexpectedly in the hallways, her sharp eyes scanning the students. I felt the weight of her gaze, knowing she was watching my every move. She didn't intervene, only observed, silently, calculatingly. The thrill of being watched added another layer of suspense. Could I maintain composure if she confronted me in front of everyone? During lunch, the stakes grew higher. I had to navigate the cafeteria, balancing food, my tray, and the subtle sways of my transformed body. Every accidental bump against a chair or glance from another student threatened to expose me. I felt my face flush repeatedly, aware of the fragility of my secret. And then, the whisper came. I knew it, a voice murmured from behind. I spun, heart pounding, to see one of the more observant students staring at me with narrowed eyes. My mind raced. Should I confront them? Explain? Or evade? Miss Davenport's words echoed in my mind: control, awareness, composure. I swallowed hard, adjusted my posture, and smiled lightly. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my tone light, casual. The student blinked, confused by my calm, then shrugged. Never mind. They walked away, but the adrenaline surge reminded me how delicate my position was. Every interaction, every glance, was a test of nerve and composure. The afternoon brought another trial, a lab session, under the pretense of normal classwork. Here, my new body had to interact with equipment, chemicals, and classmates, all while maintaining the feminine persona Ms. Davenport had molded. She lingered at the back of the lab, notebook in hand, observing silently. Every action, from pouring liquid into beakers to balancing on stools, had to be precise. Every slip or hesitation could reveal the truth. And then, disaster struck. A tray of test tubes tipped slightly, and I reached instinctively to catch them. My sleeve slipped, exposing more of my transformed arms than intended. Gasps from nearby students made my heart leap. I froze, then quickly adjusted my posture, pretending to check something on the table. Miss Davenport's eyes met mine briefly, a flash of approval in her gaze, but the tension did not ease. I had survived, but barely. By evening, the psychological strain became almost unbearable. My muscles ached from the constant balancing act of composure, my mind raced from fear, and yet, there was an undeniable thrill. Every glance, every whisper, every accidental exposure heightened the intensity of the experiment. I was living in a state of perpetual suspense, exhilaration intertwined with terror. The final trial came after school. Miss Davenport instructed me to remain in the classroom while she stepped out, leaving me alone under the guise of observation. The hallways outside were quiet, but the silence only amplified my anxiety. Every creak, every distant step, made me tense. And then, a shadow appeared at the doorway. I froze. Heart hammering. The door opened slowly, and there she was, another teacher, unaware of the experiment, stepping in for a late meeting. My body tensed, posture rigid, every movement under microscopic scrutiny. I had to maintain composure, act natural, and prevent exposure, all while my body, my voice, my essence screamed femininity. The shadow moved closer. I breathed shallowly, adjusting my hair, smoothing my skirt. And just as the teacher's gaze lingered, Ms. Davenport returned, stepping silently behind me. "Everything under control," she whispered, voice calm, authoritative, deadly precise. "Yes," I whispered back, trembling, but upright, poised, and composed. She smiled, satisfaction radiating from her. "Excellent. You've passed the final psychological test. But remember, the experiment is never truly over. The world outside this room will challenge you. Can you maintain this identity under observation, scrutiny, and temptation?" My heart raced. The answer was uncertain. I had survived the physical transformation, maintained composure, and navigated near exposure, but the real challenge was only beginning. Every glance from others, every interaction, every step outside the lab was a test of identity, control, and courage. By the time the school day ended, my body and mind were exhausted. Every step I had taken, every glance I had endured, every interaction I had navigated had drained me in ways I didn't think were possible. I was no longer the boy who walked into Ms. Davenport's lab the day before. I was someone entirely new. My hair, perfectly styled, my face, delicate and feminine, my posture, graceful yet tense. I had survived exposure, maintained composure, and even navigated social interactions without being unmasked. And yet, the thrill and terror hadn't faded. I walked through the empty hallways, the echo of my heels the only sound. Each click against the linoleum reminded me that I was vulnerable, exposed, but also alive in a way I had never felt. Ms. Davenport had left me with a warning: the experiment is never truly over. Observation doesn't end when the bell rings. I paused outside the lab, catching my reflection in the window. The girl staring back at me was flawless, beautiful even, but every detail reminded me of the precariousness of my situation. My body was someone else's design. My identity was under scrutiny. And every decision I made from this moment forward would test my ability to maintain control. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "You're not done yet. Are you ready for the next phase?" My heart skipped a beat. The unknown sender, the timing, the ambiguity, it was all too much. I had no idea if this was Ms. Davenport, another observer, or someone entirely unexpected. Fear and anticipation tangled in my chest. I hurried out of the building, trying to act casual, adjusting my blouse and skirt with delicate hands. Every passerby, every parked car, every shadow made me flinch. The thrill of the experiment, the danger of being exposed, was intoxicating. My pulse raced with adrenaline, my body alive with sensations I had never experienced before. Then, as I reached the parking lot, I froze. A sleek black car idled nearby, its tinted windows obscuring the interior. A figure emerged from the shadows, and my breath caught in my throat. It was someone I knew, but someone I hadn't expected to see. Their gaze swept over me slowly, appraising, analyzing, and I felt every ounce of composure I had fought to maintain begin to unravel. Ms. Davenport's words echoed in my mind: control, awareness, composure. I straightened my posture, adjusted my hair, and forced a casual smile, even though my heart pounded like a drum. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to escape the scrutiny that had become my life. But part of me, the part that had felt the thrill of transformation, the forbidden excitement of inhabiting this new body, wanted to stay, to face whatever was coming. The figure approached slowly, each step deliberate, heightening the tension. I could see the faint outline of a notebook in their hand, a camera perhaps, or just a record of my every move. My pulse quickened. Could I maintain composure under this new scrutiny? Could I navigate this challenge without slipping, without revealing the secret that had consumed my life in the past 24 hours? And then the figure stopped, tilting their head, as if assessing me, measuring me. My legs trembled, my fingers tightened against the hem of my skirt, and my mind raced. Every scenario ran through my head: confrontation, discovery, exposure, embarrassment, or perhaps even worse, control. Before I could react, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number: "You've done well so far, but the final test begins now. Are you ready to truly embrace her?" The words sent a shiver down my spine. My heart thundered in my chest. Every muscle in my body tensed. I realized, with a mix of fear and exhilaration, that the experiment had only just begun. There was no turning back. The girl I had become, the body I inhabited, the persona I had embraced, was now at the mercy of forces I didn't fully understand. And then, as the figure in the shadows moved closer, the screen of my phone lit up with one more message: "Tonight, you will decide who controls this experiment, you or her." I froze. The world around me seemed to hold its breath. The thrill of transformation collided with the terror of exposure. My mind raced, my body quivered, and I realized that my life had been changed forever. The suspense was unbearable, the stakes impossibly high, and the night had only just begun. With a final glance at the approaching figure, my reflection in the car window caught my eye. The girl staring back at me was poised, beautiful, transformed, but utterly vulnerable. And as the shadows closed in, I understood that the next chapter of this experiment would push me further than I had ever imagined, forcing me to confront fears, desires, and truths I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The night fell around me, dark, heavy, and filled with suspense. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. The experiment wasn't over. And as the figure stepped into the faint glow of the streetlights, I knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow, nothing would be the same.